Three things you can count on in life: death, taxes, and week one of fantasy football being absolute chaos. So many random touchdowns, so many huge busts, so many surprise performances. But look, before you do something crazy and rage drop one of your studs, I'm going to tell you, take a deep breath. Let's talk about it. I'm going to go over all the busts that matter for fantasy this week, and I'm going to tell you what actually happened here and should you be worried. And not only that, this year I'm actually introducing a panic level. So I'm going to give you my panic level on each of these players so you know where I stand going forward. And another thing I'm doing a little bit different this year is I'm going to go game by game. So if you have players in certain games and you don't want to listen to the whole thing, I got timestamps down below. Skip ahead to the games you want to listen to. But without further ado, let's jump right into it, and let's start with that Thursday night game, Ravens at Chiefs. This was a great game in real life, almost had an incredible comeback. Pretty much a great game for fantasy too, except for a couple of tight ends. Let's talk about those guys. And let's start with Mark Andrews, only 2 catches for 14 yards. Meanwhile, Isaiah Likely just going off in this game, now probably going to be one of the hottest waiver wire pickups. But look, Andy from the Footballers did a great breakdown on this. The Chiefs' game plan was to bracket Mark Andrews, take him out, make somebody else beat him, and it almost worked. So I do think Mark Andrews is going to be fine. Maybe he won't be elite this year, but he'll still be okay as a tight end. I'm not benching him. I'm not dropping him. I'm not, panic trading him. I'm going to put the panic level here on Mark Andrews at a 5 because I do think Isaiah Likely is going to have a role, but Mark Andrews is going to be fine. But we got to talk about the tight end on the other side too, and that is Travis Kelce. I am more concerned for Travis Kelce. Here is why. You're talking about a game with no Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy making his first NFL start. He played almost 90% of the snaps, which shows you the Chiefs were like, hey, this is an important game. We need you out there. And he had the same number of catches and less yards than backup tight end Noah Gray. How does it get better for Travis Kelce from here? I mean, Hollywood Brown's going to be healthy at some point. Xavier Worthy's only going to get more and more involved. I was already worried about Travis Kelce this year. This did not do anything to make me feel better about him. I'm putting the panic level at a 7 for Travis Kelce. And let's not forget about Derrick Henry. A lot of people freaking out right now because they saw Justice Hill catch a bunch of passes. He only had 46 yards. I mean, they're like, yeah, he scored, but he didn't do anything else. Okay, sure. This is Derrick Henry, though. He's going to get game scripted out. He was game scripted out in Tennessee. The good news for Derrick Henry here is the Ravens are only underdogs in, I think, 2 more games. Derrick Henry is going to be just fine this year. He's probably going to go over 1,000 yards, 15 plus touchdowns. Don't panic on Derrick Henry. I'm putting the panic level at a 3. On Friday night, we got treated to Packers at Eagles, and even despite all the slipping on the field, this was another really good game, came down to the wire, and it looks like we dodged a bullet with Jordan Love. Yes, he's going to miss some time, but it could have been much worse, and really, there wasn't any big busts in fantasy in this game, so overall, a pretty good game. And look, at this point, feeling pretty good heading into week 1, like, hey, this is going to be a good week, like, no big issues here. And then Sunday, starting with Steelers at the Ravens. Look, Arthur Smith got his revenge, even though the Steelers scored 0 touchdowns in this game. And Kirk Cousins, is he rusty? Is this just coming back from the injury? Is this learning the new system? All of the above? I don't know, but this was not a great game for fantasy. And we got to start with probably the biggest name at wide receiver in this game, and that was Drake London. He was like a second, 3rd round pick in fantasy. 2 catches for 15 yards is not exactly what you're looking for, but hey, it was better than last year's week 1 when he had 0 across the board. But look, again, Kirk Cousins, only 16 completions in this game, looked terrible. I gotta believe Kirk Cousins and this offense is going to get better, so I can't pretend like I'm not concerned at all here for Drake London, but at the same time, I'm not panicking. Let's put the panic level at a 5. And speaking of Kirk Cousins, if you punted QB and he was your QB1, you're not feeling good this week. 155 yards and 2 interceptions. I mean, at least he did throw 1 touchdown. But again, I got to imagine this guy is going to get better. He's in a new system. He's coming off an injury. You got to think as the weeks go on, he's going to get more comfortable. He's going to get better. So again, putting the panic level only at a 5 for Kirk Cousins. Now, a guy I might be a little bit more worried about on the Steelers side, Jaylen Warren. Sure, he was coming off an injury here, but only 2 carries, only 2 catches. I mean, Najee Harris looked pretty good. Cordero Patterson had double the amount of carries of Jaylen Warren. I've always said I don't think he fits this Arthur Smith running scheme. I'm not feeling great about Jaylen Warren right now. I have to put the panic level at about a 7 at this time. Next up, we had Cardinals at the Bills, and this was probably the most frustrating game for fantasy because it felt like a game where there should be a ton of fantasy points, like a ton of passing, and really it was just frustration almost across the board, probably outside of the running backs, James Conner and James Cook. Again, let's start with probably the biggest name here, Marvin Harrison Jr., the rookie for the Cardinals. 1 catch for 4 yards on only 3 targets. That is not what you want to see, especially we saw a lot of rookie wide receivers have pretty nice week ones. Not what we were expecting from Marvin Harrison at all. But look, he's a rookie. It was his first start. Like I said, this game was weird, just weird for the passing games on both sides here. I can't say I'm not a little bit nervous for Marvin Harrison Jr., but I still believe in the talent here. I still think he'll be fine. I'm going to put the panic level at a 4. And again, we got to look at tight end here. Let's start with the Cardinals tight end, Trey McBride. I mean, he had 5 catches for 30 yards, which, he didn't kill you, but this isn't what you're looking for a tight end you drafted, top 5, top 4, maybe even top 3 at the position. But he did lead the team with 9 targets. That's the encouraging thing here. The worry here was this was a great matchup for him with Matt Milano out, but still, a weird game. Better days definitely ahead for Trey McBride. I'm only going to put the panic level at a 1 here. He'll be fine. Now, I'm probably a little bit more worried about Dalton Kincaid. I mean, 1 catch for 11 yards, not what you drafted at all. But what I'm really worried about is he had 2 targets, but so did Dawson Knox. I mean, if he's going to be splitting with Dawson Knox, that is going to be terrible for him. Now, do I think this is how it's going to be all year? No. Again, a very weird game here in the passing games on both sides of the ball. So Dalton Kincaid, while I'm a little bit more worried about him than Trey McBride, I'm still not panicking here. Panic level will be a 4. Titans and Bears, one of the ugliest games of the slate, although the Bears defense was great. If you started the Bears defense, you're probably pretty happy right now. But we saw some terrible quarterback play in this game. 220 combined passing yards. That is not going to make for a good fantasy game. Let's talk about the players that got wrecked in this one. Starting with Calvin Ridley, 3 catches for 50 yards. I mean, he did lead the team with 7 targets, but man, Will Levis did not take that step forward. I mean, not even just like bad throws, just like, what are you doing type of plays, Will Levis? Like, what are you thinking? So, look, maybe Levis gets better, and maybe that helps Calvin Ridley. I wasn't really a big fan of this combination. Anyways, coming into the season, nothing I saw made me feel any better. But Calvin Ridley wasn't a guy you were drafting to depend on week in and week out. So I'll put the panic level at a 6 here for Calvin Ridley. Then on the other side, we got DJ Moore. And look, when your QB throws for 93 yards, you're probably going to bust as a wide receiver. I mean, he did get 5 catches for 36 yards, so it's not like he got you absolutely nothing, but you're not looking for 5 catches for 36 yards from DJ Moore. I got to believe that Caleb Williams is going to get better. His first NFL start. The Titans did bolster that secondary. Look, it may be rough in the beginning of the season here while Caleb Williams works through the growing pains, but eventually he'll get better. DJ Moore will benefit. I'm not panicking on DJ Moore. Let's put the panic level at a 5. Let's also put it at a 5 for Keenan Allen. 4 catches, 29 yards. That's pretty bad, but he did have 11 targets, so that's nice. Now, the issue here is he did limp off the field at the end of the game. He was already dealing with an injury. We'll have to see about that, but assuming he's healthy and good to go, it looks like Caleb Williams will target him, so that's a good thing. So again, Keenan Allen going to be at a 5. And then there was running back DeAndre Swift, who I guess was technically the workhorse running back because he had 10 carries and no other running back had more than 2. But I mean, again, when you're in this kind of an offense, what are you really going to do production-wise? Can't really freak out about this. Can't look too much into it. You got to think Caleb Williams and this offense is going to get better as the season rolls around. So once again, I'm just going to put the panic level at a 5 for DeAndre Swift and move on. The upset of the day was definitely Patriots over the Bengals. This was the biggest upset in terms of spread since 2018. I mean, the Bengals looked like listless. Like they didn't even look like they had energy or wanted to be out there. So once again, Bengals off to a terrible start. Here we go again. And of course, Jamar Chase, I mean, he played, but 6 catches for 62 yards. I was actually shocked when I saw that he had 6 catches for 62 yards because it felt like he wasn't even out there, honestly. I mean, look, he's going to obviously get better. Joe Burrow is going to get better. The Bengals are going to get better. There's no panic on Jamar Chase here. He's not holding out. Panic level, a 1 for Jamar Chase. Same thing for Joe Burrow. I mean, he was efficient, 21 completions on 29 attempts, but only 5.7 yards per attempt. I mean, everything was just quick, short. Like I said, it didn't feel like the Bengals were into this game. Maybe now they know Chase is playing. Maybe they get T. Higgins back. Maybe they'll be better in week 2. I mean, they almost have to be better in week 2. But I still like Joe Burrow this year. I still think he's going to be good. Panic level is going to be a 1 here also for Joe Burrow. Now, Texans at Colts might have been the best game, not only of the day, but also for fantasy. A great game, a lot of back and forth, an exciting finish. But there are still a couple wide receivers we do need to talk about. Let's start with Tank Dell of the Texans. Only 3 catches for 40 yards, but he was second on the team with 7 targets. Look, it's going to be a volatile offense. I know Diggs had 2 touchdowns, but I mean, he only averaged like 5.5 yards per reception. I still think this is Nico and Tank Dell are the 2 guys you're going to want more often than not in here. So not worried about Tank Dell. Better days are ahead. Panic level also at a 1 here. And I'm also not worried about Michael Pittman. Sure, 4 catches, 31 yards, not what you're looking for, but he led the team with 8 targets. And look, Alec Pierce had a 60-yard touchdown. Ashton Dulin had a huge touchdown. Alec Pierce had another huge gain. I mean, Anthony Richardson only completed 9 passes. He only attempted 19. It was just huge big play after huge big play. It's not going to be like that every week. Pittman will be just fine. Again, panic level only a 1 on Pittman. Jaguars at Dolphins, and this was a bit of a frustrating game because it was supposed to be a high-scoring game, great for fantasy, but it really wasn't. And because of that, we definitely have some busts that we got to talk about. Let's start with the running back for Jacksonville, Travis Etienne. Okay, he scored a touchdown, so you're probably like, okay, he didn't kill me this week, but you got to look a little deeper. He fumbled at the goal line, and he also split carries. Yes, he split carries with Tank Bigsby, 12 each. Not only that, Tank Bigsby almost doubled him up on yards. This is a real concern because Doug Peterson was talking all this offseason, we got to get Tank Bigsby more involved. And they did. And he was good. I think this is going to be an issue for Travis Etienne going forward. Travis Etienne will still be good. He'll still be fine. But you may regret taking him in round 2 if you did. But I'm not full on panicking on Travis Etienne just yet. But I'm going to set the level at 6. We'll see how it goes next week. And then Christian Kirk 2024 looking just like Christian Kirk 2023. 1 catch for 30 yards here while rookie teammate Brian Thomas Jr. had an okay game. I mean, he scored a touchdown. Good for a rookie. But look, Kirk did this last year. I'm not worried about Christian Kirk. Better days will be ahead. It's just what you get with Christian Kirk. Yeah, he's probably going to be volatile, especially in this offense. So better days still ahead for Christian Kirk. Going to put the panic level at a 4. And I'm also not putting the panic level very high on Evan Ingram here. I mean, 4 targets, but only 1 catch. But again, Trevor Lawrence did not throw the ball a lot. It was just one of those weird games where, like, the offenses didn't have to do a whole lot. So Evan Ingram, he's going to be fine. Panic level at a 3. Now on the Dolphins side, we might have to start being worried about Raheem Mostert. He did not pick up where he left off last year. 6 carries for 9 yards. But the concerning thing here is, okay, Achane had 10 carries. Fine. We thought Achane might get more carries. That's acceptable. Jeff Wilson had 5 carries. He couldn't even hold off Jeff Wilson. This is a major concern for Raheem Mostert. I'm very worried that this is going to be a guy who's not going to come anywhere close to what we saw last year. But at the same time, it's only 1 game. Let's not completely freak out. Panic level at a 7 here. Vikings at Giants, and honestly, my favorite part of this game was when Scott Hansen on the red zone called Sam Darnold Dimes. Yes, Darnold Dimes. And look, he deserved that way more than Daniel Jones did. Daniel Jones and this Giants team was predictably as bad as advertised. But let's talk about the guys that didn't come through in this one. And really, the only one I think I really need to talk about here is Malik Neighbors. And look, Malik Neighbors wasn't bad. He had 5 catches for 66 yards, which is pretty good for a rookie performance, especially considering Daniel Jones, how bad he was. But the reason I'm putting him on here is because some people drafted him early, had higher expectations. Look, he's probably going to have a pretty decent floor most weeks because he's good enough and he's going to get targeted. I worry if the ceiling is going to be there a lot of weeks, but still, I'm not panicking on Malik Neighbors by any stretch. He was fine today. I mean, he was good, honestly. He himself was good. Yeah, you might panic on Jones, but Neighbors will be fine. Panic level, a 3. All right, the afternoon slated games didn't get a whole lot better. Let's start with Panthers at Saints, and oh my goodness, I thought the Panthers were bad last year. They might have been the worst team today. I mean, although the Browns might have something to say about that in a bit here, but Panthers bad on both sides of the ball. Let's talk about how bad it was for the Panthers. And obviously, we got to talk about Deontay Johnson here. 2 catches for 19 yards. I mean, okay, he had 6 targets, but I mean, if the Panthers are going to be this bad, like, what can we really expect from Deontay Johnson this year? This is a good player who should be getting targets, but I mean, when your quarterback only completes 13 passes for 161 yards, like, what are you going to do? I mean, the hope here is that Bryce Young and Dave Canales figure this thing out, but right now you got to be worried. I'm putting the panic level at a 7. And now, despite the Saints rolling the Panthers, Chris Olave only 2 catches for 11 yards. But look, you got to look deeper here. Rashid Shaheed had a huge touchdown. Alvin Kamara predictably ran wild all over this Panthers offense. The Saints pulled their starters in the 4th quarter. Derek Carr only attempted 23 passes. This wasn't a game where the Saints had to do anything. They had 30 points in the 2nd quarter. Look, better days are definitely ahead for Chris Olave. This is just one of those games where the Saints just rolled the Panthers and they barely needed to do anything. Panic level will be a 2 for Chris Olave. All right, Raiders at Chargers, another fantasy disaster here. Let's talk about them. We got a lot of guys to talk about. Let's just jump right into it. Let's start with Gus Edwards. Hey, look, J.K. Dobbins ripping off some long runs. He looks like me running. I mean, you can tell this guy is far from 100%, but Gus Edwards was technically the RB1 here with 11 carries, but he was bad and Dobbins was good. So could we see this shift? Could we see more Dobbins and less Edwards? It's possible, but look, you didn't draft Gus Edwards to be like your every week starting running back. Yes, we were very high on Gus Edwards. This was not a good start for Gus Edwards, but also you probably didn't need to start Gus Edwards in most spots, but still, you got to be worried here. I'm going to put the panic level at a 6. All right, and I'm just going to quickly blanket the Chargers wide receivers. I mean, nobody had more than 39 receiving yards. I mean, sure, Ladd McConkey scored. That's nice, but this was terrible performance. You don't want any part of this Chargers wide receiver room more than likely. I'm putting this receiving room at a 9 right now, which leads me to Justin Herbert. If you happen to punt QB and you're like, hey, I believe in Justin Herbert, he can bounce back, you can't be feeling too good after today. I mean, he did throw a touchdown, but only 144 yards. Again, this is just not going to be an offense that's going to utilize the passing game unless they have to. So probably going to also put the panic level at a 9 here. I just don't expect anything from Justin Herbert this year. And then speaking of unfriendly fantasy passing offenses, how about the Raiders? Let's start with Davante Adams. I mean, he was okay today, right? He had 5 catches, 59 yards. He didn't kill you, but again, this is not what you drafted Davante Adams for. And the real issue here is that Brock Bowers actually had more targets and looks good, and Jacoby Myers actually looked pretty good. So now they have 3 viable pass-catching weapons, and they still have Gardner Minshew at quarterback. Look, Davante Adams will be fine. He'll have some moments, but I mean, again, his yards per reception in this game, 9.7 after a big drop last year. I think vintage Davante Adams is long gone. If you drafted him in the second round, probably not going to happen for you. I'm putting the panic level at a 7. And then, Zamir White. I mean, he did have 13 carries. He was the absolute workhorse running back, and he did catch 2 passes, but he only totaled 46 yards, and he had a fumble. So, not the best day. But look, if he's going to get the bulk of the carries, and he's going to catch a decent amount of passes, he's going to be just fine in fantasy. It's just one game. He'll be fine in fantasy. Let's not totally overreact here. I'm going to put the panic level at a 6. All right, Cowboys at Browns. And look, for one team, it was a disaster for fantasy, and that's the Browns. For the Cowboys, it was just okay because the Browns couldn't put up a fight. All right, but let's talk about the players here, starting with Amari Cooper. The good news, 9 targets. The bad news, 2 catches, 16 yards. I mean, was it just the Cowboys defense? Is Deshaun Watson just this bad? I feel like it's probably a little both, but mostly the latter. Very nervous about Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper here, but this is a good Dallas defense. I mean, he'll be better than this, I'm sure, but I'm definitely nervous with Deshaun Watson. I'm going to put the panic level at a 7 here for Amari Cooper. Speaking of Deshaun Watson, I mean, what are we even expecting here at this point? We have not seen the same guy that we saw in Houston, nothing even close. What's going to change here? Deshaun Watson, I don't even want to start this guy in a super flex league. Panic level, a 10. I'm done. And no, we are not panicking about CeeDee Lamb or Dak Prescott. This was a road game in Cleveland. Predictably, they didn't have huge games. They're going to be just fine. Then we had the Broncos going into Seattle, and look, we had another rookie QB that looked like a rookie QB making his first start, and an offense that didn't put up much of a fight. So the other offense, the Seahawks, also didn't have to put up much of a fight. So we have a lot of guys that disappointed here. Let's talk about them. Starting with DK Metcalf, got the pass retained treatment, and look, Geno Smith only threw for 162 yards because, again, the Broncos could not put up a fight, and they hardly needed to throw. DK Metcalf is going to be just fine. This is probably the toughest matchup he's going to get all year. Not worried about DK Metcalf at all. Panic level is an absolute 0 here. And then I was a little hesitant to put JSN on here, Jackson Smith-Njigba, because he's not a guy you're counting on like every week to be in your lineup. But also, I wasn't encouraged by what I saw because he looks like he's still behind Tyler Lockett here. And that is not a good thing going into year 2. Look, it's only one game. Maybe it was just the way they liked the game or the game flow went. But you got to be a little nervous here, especially after what we saw last year. So I'm putting the panic level at a 6 for JSN. But then on the Broncos side, again, I almost didn't mention Javonte Williams because, yeah, I like him as a late-round running back, and there's still potential for him. But, you know, some people may have started him this week. And what I'm a little worried about here is Jaleel McLaughlin had 5 catches for 1 yard. Really? 1 yard, and you're still throwing to this guy? Like, why? Like, if Javonte's not going to get that pass-catching work, that's going to definitely cap his upside. So, something I'm going to be monitoring going forward. Not completely terrified yet. Going to put the panic level at a 5. And then Courtland Sutton, again, another guy you probably weren't relying on in most leagues, but only 4 catches for 38 yards. But he did have an incredible 12 targets in this game, so at least that part is there. And look, if Bo Nix can, figure it out, figure out the NFL game speed, and things can slow down for him, maybe Courtland Sutton can start being a viable, startable option. So again, though, this is a late round pick. No panic on Courtland Sutton here, a 3. And then we finished with Commanders at Buccaneers, and the Commanders defense was predictably bad, which led to predictably good offensive performances for the Buccaneers. So if you had almost any buck, you're feeling pretty good right now. On the Commanders side, they've mostly had a pretty good offensive performance, except for one guy, Terry McLaurin. Only 2 catches on 4 targets. But again, this is Jaden Daniels' first start. Like I gotta think they're gonna manufacture ways to get Terry McLaurin the ball. Todd Bowles said before the game, look, we are gonna try to do whatever we can to take Terry McLaurin out of this game. And they mostly did it. I mean, they almost hit on that deep shot. That would have been nice and you'd be feeling fine. But still, I do have to be a little nervous. I mean, he's got a rookie quarterback here. And even though Jaden Daniels did look the best of all the rookie quarterbacks by far, in my opinion, he's still got some work to do in the passing game. So not freaking out yet, but also a little nervous here. I'll put the panic level at a 5. All right, so there's my takes on the biggest busts in week 1, at least the guys that are mostly fantasy relevant. But look, week 2 is coming up. You got to get ready, and we got you with our week 2 playlist right here. We're going to start filling this thing with videos every single day. Waiver wire, booms, start sits, trades, everything you need to dominate in week 2. You're going to find it in this playlist, so keep an eye out on that.